The following are first-hand accounts of people who have experienced true horror. These are their stories.
It started when I was just 10 years old, after my family and I moved into our first multi-story house in a small city. My mother, siblings, and I were settling in, and some of our relatives came to help us move. My cousin even stayed the night, but something happened that made him never return. As he sat watching a movie on his laptop in what would soon be my room, he saw something. A girl, dressed in a long white gown, her black hair cascading down her back, pale as a ghost. She walked right past the open door and disappeared into the room next door. He didn't scream, didn't try to make sense of it. He was too scared. The next morning, he packed up and left, never coming back. But that was just the beginning. After he left, strange things began happening in the house. We'd hear knocks on the walls, sometimes on the bottom of my mom's bed. Everyone in the house started seeing things. Shadows out of the corner of their eyes, strange noises in the night. But the worst part, the part that haunted me personally, was the shadow figure. This thing, it wasn't just lingering in the background, it was following me. I remember one night clearly. I was sharing a room with my siblings, the same room where my cousin had seen the girl. I woke up to the sound of one of my siblings crying. After calming them down, I tried to go back to sleep. But something made me look toward the doorway. And there it was, a figure darker than the shadows around it, standing just outside the door. It looked like a moving scribble, chaotic lines with no form, no eyes, but I could feel it staring at me. I was frozen, gripped by an intense fear, but I didn't scream. I didn't even move. Eventually, I forced myself to sleep, but the next morning, I decided not to tell my mom. She didn't like talking about spirits or ghosts. For days, the shadow would reappear, always there when I woke up, watching. It would stand in doorways or linger in the corner of whatever room I was in. Sometimes, it even waved. But no one else seemed to see it. It was just me. I don't know how long this went on, but I learned one thing. It didn't like light. If there was enough light, it wouldn't show up. From that point on, I made sure to always have a light on in my room. Eventually, we moved across town to a new house, and for a while, things seemed to settle down. I still slept with the lights on, just in case. But as I started to feel more comfortable, I let myself turn them off and even closed the door at night. I thought it was over. But then one night my mom sent me a text asking if I was awake. She said the dogs were barking at some noise coming from upstairs. Her room was downstairs, so I decided to check. I opened my door and looked toward the staircase, and there she was. The same girl that my cousin had described, sitting at the top of the stairs, wearing the same white gown, with her black hair spilling over her shoulders. I could see her pale skin as she sat there with a blank expression. I backed into my room, heart racing, and tried to calm myself by scrolling through my phone. My mom came upstairs to use the bathroom, but she didn't see anything. After she went back downstairs, I looked again, but the girl was gone. Things continued to happen. My mom started hearing me talk to people in my sleep. I tried to fight it by stringing Christmas lights all over my room, hoping they'd stay on, but it didn't stop the strange occurrences. Eventually, they cooled down, and I stopped seeing things. But I never forgot. We moved again, and I thought maybe, finally, I'd left it all behind. But I was wrong. After a few weeks in the new house, I had a dream. Something was trying to grab me, and I woke up whispering, "Please don't hurt me." From that moment, the fear came rushing back. I felt like something was following me again. And then, one night, I woke up and saw it. This time, it was forming on my bookcase, bubbling like a shadow trying to take shape. I watched it for a moment before grabbing my phone and shining the flashlight on it. Instantly, it vanished. Since then, I've been leaving the lights on every night. I'm older now, but this shadow still haunts me. I feel lost, like I need help, but I don't know who to ask or where to turn.
My husband and I spent years moving around every 4 years, our children in tow, due to our military duties. The last 3 assignments saw us go from Los Angeles to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and then back to LA. When we returned to LA, we found a newly built 2-story back unit that seemed perfect for us, so we wasted no time moving in. It felt like a fresh start, but little did I know, it would become a chapter of our lives we'd never forget. About a month and a half after settling in, I was 7 months pregnant with our only girl. It was a typical night, quiet, still. I woke up around 1 a.m. for one of my usual bathroom trips. As I was making my way back to bed, something strange happened. Without warning, something grabbed my legs. I barely had time to react before I was yanked to the ground. Instinctively, I leaned toward the bed, bending my left knee just in time to stop myself from falling flat on my stomach. My immediate concern was the baby, so I didn't even try to figure out what had just happened. I convinced my husband not to take me to the hospital that night, and though my body ached, I cried myself to sleep, focused solely on monitoring the baby's movements. It wasn't until later that I found out the truth. I had broken my back. The damage required surgery, but the doctors insisted it had to wait until after the baby's delivery. And so, we went on with our lives. But the house seemed to have other plans. Over the next 4 years, strange things started happening in that home. Things I couldn't explain. I remember the first time I heard it. Tiny feet running down the hallway toward my bedroom, followed by the sensation of something jumping onto the bed. It was so real that I was certain it was my 5-year-old son. But then I looked at the clock. It was only 9 a.m., and my son was still at school. I was alone, recuperating from surgery. That wasn't the only time. My husband had experienced something similar, but we never spoke about it, at least not at first. We brushed it off, each dealing with our own silent unease. That all changed one night. My mother had come to visit, and I got home late. I guided her to her room before heading straight into the bathroom. I spent about 20 minutes in there, but as I finished up, I heard a sound coming from the bedroom, a faint squeal, barely audible. It didn't sound like my husband, but I couldn't be sure. Standing just outside the bathroom door, I strained my ears, but the noise quickly disappeared. I walked into the bedroom, and as soon as I saw my husband, I could tell something was wrong. He whispered urgently for me to turn on the light. His voice trembled, and he was frozen in place, eyes wide in fear. He asked me to look at his chest and see if there was any sort of indentation. I didn't understand at first, but then he told me. He had heard me come into the room, but as he lay there, his body started to sink into the bed. A dark mist had appeared in front of him, hovering over his chest. He tried to scream, but his voice barely came out, just that low squeal I'd heard. That night, we finally talked. We opened up about all the strange, unsettling things we had been experiencing. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just him. Our daughter, who by then was old enough to use a phone, had even managed to capture it. She took 3 pictures in quick succession, and in one of them, there was a thick, smoky cloud hovering above my husband's head. And it didn't stop there. Even after we moved, after retiring and settling down elsewhere in LA, it didn't end. My husband swore that whatever it was, it had followed us. And to this day, I still can't shake the feeling that he's right.
When I was about 17, I had an experience that I'll never forget. It started on a dull evening when my friends and I were all bored out of our minds, sitting around my house with nothing to do. Joey, one of my buddies, was so bored that he was literally banging his head against the wall. Tommy, another friend, was sitting with his nose buried in a book he'd brought along, while his sister, Alexis, was amusing herself by teasing my dog with a flashlight. Henry had his headphones on, music blasting, completely checked out of the situation, and Annie, my other friend, was on my laptop trying to find something fun to do. That's when she stumbled across this post on a ghost website. Some guys had written about an abandoned local farm they'd explored and how they'd been scared out of their wits by a black figure they'd seen there. Annie, who's really into paranormal stuff, was instantly hooked and suggested we go check it out. I figured why not? It had to be better than sitting around watching Alexis provoke my dog into biting her. Everyone else agreed, so we all piled into my truck. It was a single cab with just 3 seats, so the girls rode in the cab with me while Joey, Henry, and Tommy rode in the truck bed. Now, I've never believed in ghosts, and if someone had told me they'd seen one, I would have told them to stop watching Scooby-Doo. But I figured this would at least give us something to do, so we followed the directions Annie had pulled from the ghost site. When we got there, it was nighttime. We hopped out and made our way up to the gate, which we had to climb over. Once we were inside, we started talking about where we should go first. We decided to split up. Tommy, Joey, and Alexis headed for the old barn, while Annie, Henry, and I made our way to the 2-story farmhouse. The place was a wreck, like whoever had lived there had been a hoarder. The windows upstairs were all smashed, and as we explored, we heard footsteps coming from the 2nd floor. Curious, we rushed upstairs to check it out, but when we got there, the place was completely empty. On our way back down, though, something weird happened. Someone pushed me, and I fell hard. Now, I've had shoulder problems in the past, so this really pissed me off. I yelled at Annie and Henry, accusing them of trying to push me down the stairs, but they swore they hadn't touched me. They said they'd been in the bedroom, going through some of the junk, when they heard me scream and came running. Henry helped me to my feet, and we were just about to leave when we heard a loud crash from the kitchen. We rushed in and saw a toolbox lying on the floor. It had been sitting on the table earlier, and now it was surrounded by scattered tools. Henry was the first to point out that the toolbox had been locked with a padlock. When we looked closer, we saw that the padlock was now sitting on the table where the toolbox had been. Earlier, Henry had tried to open it, but couldn't because of the lock. Before we had time to process this, we heard footsteps upstairs again. Annie had had enough by this point. She bolted for the door, with Henry right behind her. They left me hobbling after them, my shoulder still aching. When we got outside, we found Alexis, Joey, and Tommy. They were out of breath, looking terrified. We asked what had happened, and Alexis, her voice shaking, said they'd seen a black figure with glowing red eyes that had charged straight at them. As if that wasn't enough, we all heard this deep snarling sound, like a huge dog, and that was all the motivation we needed to get the heck out of there. As we were making a break for it, I glanced back and yelled for everyone to stop. In one of the upstairs windows, we saw 2 glowing eyes. They were staring intently, sending chills down our spines. And almost as soon as we saw them, they disappeared. And that was it for us. We all jumped the fence, hopped in the truck, and peeled out of there like we'd just broken out of prison. I tell you what, that's the last time I'll ever do anything like that again.
These events took place in southeast London back in the 1980s. It was a long time ago when I was dating my ex-husband. At the time, he was living in this damp, dingy basement flat where a previous tenant had actually nailed the wallpaper to the wall to keep it from peeling off. At first, I didn't mind going there. For the first couple of weeks, it seemed like just another old flat. But then, one afternoon, something happened that changed my perception of the place entirely. It was a sunny day, and I had gone upstairs to use the shared bathroom. The bathroom was disgusting, shared by all the tenants, but I tried not to think about it. I just wanted to get in and out. But as I came back downstairs, I froze. Standing by the window on the first floor was a man. He was dressed in a World War II ARP warden's uniform, staring intently outside. At first, I thought he was just another tenant. But then I noticed something strange. He seemed too focused, almost like he didn't belong in the present. Following his gaze, I saw a family in the garden below. 2 children and their parents. The father was in a Royal Navy uniform, and they were playing with a ball, completely unaware of the warden watching them. He started banging on the window, shouting silently, desperately trying to get their attention. His gestures were frantic, and it took me a moment to understand what he was trying to do. He was pointing toward the Anderson shelter in the back of the garden, trying to get the family to safety. But they didn't respond. They didn't even seem to notice him at all. That's when it hit me. This wasn't something happening now. It was a scene from the past. The warden turned abruptly and headed for the stairs, but before he could reach them, he vanished into thin air. I stood there, stunned. And then I heard it. Footsteps, running down the stairs, echoing through the house. I rushed to the window, hoping to see him in the garden, but when I looked outside, the family was gone. The garden was still, quiet, like nothing had ever happened. I didn't know what to make of it at first, but then it happened again. I saw the warden, the family, the same scene playing out just as it had before. And again. Each time it was exactly the same. The warden shouting, the family laughing, unaware of the danger. It was as if I was watching a film on repeat. That's when I realized this wasn't just a haunting. It was something different, something sadder. I was witnessing a residual haunting, a ghostly replay of a tragic moment from the past. The spirits weren't interacting with me. They weren't aware of the present. They were stuck, replaying their final moments over and over again. The more I saw it, the more curious I became. I went to the local library and dug into the history of the area. What I found left me heartbroken. A bomb had landed on the house behind my ex-husband's flat during World War II. The family I saw in the garden had been killed by debris in the fire that followed. The ARP warden had died trying to save them, running from the house in a desperate attempt to get them into the shelter. Each time I saw the scene replay, I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. The family had been so happy in that moment, playing in the garden, maybe enjoying the brief time they had while the father was home on leave. But they never made it to safety. They were already gone, trapped in that tragic moment, unable to move on. Even now, all these years later, I can still see it in my mind, the warden's frantic gestures, the family's laughter, and the weight of knowing what was about to happen. It's a memory that will stay with me forever, a haunting reminder that sometimes the past refuses to stay buried.